Glenn. We'll just make sure we've covered everything that needs to be covered here. That's all good. So you've started the recording. Thanks for that, Glenn. So welcome everybody tonight to this is almost the last night of the lessons for this particular cluster. And I want you to take notice of the email that I sent you today, that you really need to make sure you're on top of things and that you're getting your activities and things done. Now, some of the activities require us as teachers to go through and tick off some things so that it gives you a little green box up the top. But at this stage, make sure that your assessment progress bar is getting done. You can see mine doesn't look too good because I haven't done those things, but you should have a green by now. And if you don't have a green for particularly these two, then make sure you get that done. Right now, you can go on and get a green for that one, which is the acknowledgement of the assessment receipt. And then this last one, which is a student summary, you can do that once we finish the last exam, and we'll open that one up so that you can, once you know what your results are, but you need to make sure that's done. You need to check your progress bar. And if there's some things there you're not sure about, just check with us. Send us a message or an email. You can easily message us up the top there and just send something through to us to check something so that you can make sure you get your 90%. We're going to leave everything open until Monday night, or later, obviously, but we're going to check the progress of you all probably Monday or Tuesday, so you can have the weekend to keep getting things done. So it shouldn't be too hard. I checked how people are going, and if we look at the overall overview of progress, I would say the other day there was probably 70% of you had 90% done, and some had nothing, but they probably have deferred till next year anyway. So you just keep an eye on that and make sure that you're getting good progress so that you can complete the unit. We really only have next week to go. So here we are on tonight, Thursday night. Then we've got Monday the 25th, 26th. There's some lessons, a little bit of content on Monday night, plus a fair bit of revision and helping you out with activities. 26th will be review, help you with activities and chasing down people to get completions. And then on the 28th at 4:30 in your respective campus will be the final two exams. Now, need to make sure you're ready for those, and to be ready for them, you need to make sure that you can access the codes up the top here somewhere, just wherever you get them from. Make sure you can get access to the codes and the standards and be able to work your way around them. So I'm going to open up the attendance choice. It's already opened actually. Is it working okay? Yep, people are able to put the attendance in, so that's good. So tonight what I want to do is do a little bit of a discussion on electrical trades. And the very first thing I want you to know is that I'm no electrician and I don't intend to be, but I have gone searching for a bit of content that will be relevant for you. And I'll do a talk here and discuss and draw information out of you all so that we can come to some help for people so that as builders, you're able to work along cooperatively with electricians and people like that. So I'm going to open up the first little discussion box. This has just added one green box to your night's completion activity, and you'll get that completed by typing into here. And what I want you to do is to type into the best of your knowledge the documents that you, as a builder, may need to be aware of when working in with electrical trades throughout the construction process. So we're looking at what type of documents do you think you, as a builder, might need to be aware of when you're working in with electrical trades as you're coordinating and looking after the whole process. So as you're doing a little search on that, you can consider back to the night when we had plumbing, and you'll recognise that plumbing is a licensed trade like electrical, which we're not supposed to do unless we hold that licence. So we're not telling you from the point of view of doing any electrical work yourself, but there's some documents that you need to be aware of, and I want you to type some in there as you think about what might you need as a builder to be able to work in with electrical people and have the job running smoothly. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to type something in there, and that'll give you one green box up in the top right hand corner towards your 90%, and we'll also open up our discussion tonight on what you might be able to use. Good job, Jai. You're first. We'll keep on pumping a few in there. Just get yourselves a green box, put in a discussion. Yeah, right. You're welcome. How you going, guys? Jump in. It'll only be a short night tonight, so we'll get you through to your activities fairly quickly, but just jump on, stay with us, focus, hold your conversations about other things for about 10, 15 minutes. We'll get the electrical done. Yep, I'm doing it right now. And then we'll get ourselves organised for an activity tonight and then get you ready for your exam next week. So I'll get a couple going in there. That's awesome. Just going to go through some of these and we'll have a discussion about them. So we'd say here may need to sign on to their permit. This may include lock box and isolating plant. Okay, there's going to be some paperwork from the suppliers and the electricians. Certificate of electrical safety, very good. And this is not a be all and end all list. There's certificate of electrical safety. There's going to be lots of information that we don't know too much about, but we're going to rely on the specialist service of electricians. You would need the series of Australian Standard 3000 so that you can plan more build and know the legal setbacks. So very good. Now, we don't want to become electricians ourselves. So I'm real cautious that you don't try and do any stuff yourself and try and tell an electrician how to do their work, but you definitely can be aware of some of the standards and the rules, wiring rules and things that they need to be aware of. So you can keep a little bit of an eye on them. You remember last week, the plumber was telling us that electricians attempted to drop their wires and cables into the plumbing trenches, and plumbers need a certain clearance around their pipes. So that sometimes isn't acceptable, and you might have to keep an eye on that. So exactly, electrician's license number and insurance is very good. Good job, Jai. Ensure they're qualified and all the correct paperwork. Could involve safe work method statements or things like that, whether they're a level 2 Sparky for mains. So there are different levels of Sparkies. Let's see what other people have popped up here. And all of you will go straight to getting a green box on the top right-hand corner. Electrical connectivity, lockbox and meter. Yep, electrical services. We've got Steve's put there, electrical license number, insurance. I think I might have done that one already. Let's see what Kamal's got in here. Hire licensed electrician, very good. Construction experience white card, very good. Check the history. So you definitely should do that, and we'll go and have a look at some of that there in a minute, how you can do that. That's good. Some of you have grabbed same sort of, we might have even had a look at that one a minute ago, so that's real good. So just keep on typing those in. That's open for a little while, and you can keep on typing your little chats into that box. And so what we've done there is we've had a little discussion about what you think some of the paperwork that might be needed for electricians. Now I'm going to put up here some discussion points that I typed down, and I want you to I'm going to go and show you as best I can from some of the sources of information of some of the things that we might need to be aware of as builders, and then we'll have a bit of a look at some of the local supply authority requirements. I had a builder who recently, about 12 months ago, did a job, and they ran into some major setbacks which held the job up because they weren't on top of the connection requirements and how long it takes to get power connected and what you actually needed and things like that. And I'm not sure if anybody else has had that type of problem, but that can be a real issue with you. So you've got to make sure that you're all over that and make sure that you've got things scheduled. So when you look at your chart for when you want things to happen, they don't always happen straight away. Quite often you've got to plan things so that you're ready for the electricians. It's no good getting some of the trades to turn up and suddenly you find out that it's going to take you actually 2 or 3 weeks to get the temporary power on. You need to make sure you've thought of that first. So as part of your scheduling for the electrical trades, you have to obviously know when you need them, and your chart will show you that. But then you have to go to try and find out, try and figure out how long it's going to take to actually get electricity connected. And so I'm going to just show you here how you can figure that out a little bit. So we'll have a look, electrical connections, we'll stick to New South Wales hopefully and see what we've got here. Now there's going to be a lot of advertisements and things there, and pretty much it's a market where people people can go to a supplier to get the connection, and that's generally your first port of call. But then when you choose your supplier, they're going to have their particular guidelines and rules and process for how you get connected to the network. And if it's a new premises, then somebody's got to put their name and phone number and credit card details or something down to be able to make the thing happen. And there's usually going to be some information on the suppliers for the different suppliers where they allow that to start happening. For example, you can see some of the different suppliers there. Quite often, if you go to some of the sites like Compare the Market or some of the different ones, they might have it's a bit like getting a CTP green slip for your car. There's lots of different people who can supply it, and you go through and choose who you want for yourself and find out from your local area. In Essential Energy is a supplier who have a network that do the actual work in certain areas, and you just go through, and here, for example, is a connecting to network energy information pack. So here's 19 pages, which is Essential Energy's details, and you want to be all over this as a builder so that you know how long it's going to take and how to meet the schedule that you've set on your Gantt chart to be able to make the house run smoothly, because you know when you need electricity, and so you've got to make sure that you're familiar with the application process and how long it's going to take. You can see here their suggestion is select a retailer, and then you'll obtain a number. You follow through, and there'll be an application form here where you can actually fill out the form. They'll give you all the details for that, and that depends on who you've chosen. So if we go to another one here, which is fairly big one, I'm just looking for so Origin Energy. That's moving home, obviously, but most of these guys have somewhere where you can access and get set up. And if we just check here for temporary power, temporary power supply, New South Wales, you'll find there's lots of, so Western Power gives you some information there, Endeavour Energy, Origin Energy Builders, New Energy Connections. They may give you an idea. In this particular one here, everything you need to get connected for a new property. So there's going to have to be probably some accounts set up. You don't want to be doing this when you want power on the next day because you've organised trades to get there. So you've got to make sure that you plan this well ahead of time. You've got the addresses correct. Quite often what you're doing is doing a lot of this when land may have only just been registered. You might struggle to have the DP numbers and the lot numbers and things like that, and it might take you a little while to be able to get all that connection. So you've got to plan well ahead of time for that type of thing. Has anybody had any good, bad, or otherwise experiences of getting power set up that they want to just type into the chat box there? You're not going to get a green box for this one, but did anyone have some experiences of getting power connected where it's really held up the job and made it quite hard? You might have had to get generators to keep the work going or things like that. So nobody's typing in there at the moment. Okay, so that's an example now. The next thing you need to be aware of with electrical is that it's a licensed trade, and so we need to make sure that we've done a check of the electrical. And if we go through to Fair Trading, who handle all trading and business type work between relationships between suppliers and clients or consumers, that's what this site is set up for. If you look at About Fair Trading, and I've just typed into the search box up here electrical, and I've come up with 274 hits, and the first ones are going to be the important ones for us. And the first one I want to introduce to you is that they have information here on electrical for this particular one here is getting a license, but they also have lots of warnings. For example, they've got one there for a scam where somebody was sending bills out to people and trying to charge them for electrical work they'd done. So lots of that type of thing happens, and that'll come up on Fair Trading's website. But the thing for us to understand is that electrical being a licensed trade, we need to make sure that we are using licensed tradespeople. So here's information for tradespeople. because so this is under the tradespeople side of things, and it tells us about licensing qualifications, and that tells us all the things people have to go through to be able to get their license as an electrician. And they have much the same, they operate under much the same criteria as we do, where they've got to have gone and done qualifications and that type of thing so that they can be ready to go. So when we come to housing and property, people who are getting building done and that type of thing, then we need to make sure, we need to be aware that people will do searches on the different qualifications that we have. And so when we come to tradespeople, down here there's a way where they can actually check a trade license. So here they talk about electricity connections, and then they've got information here where we can do a license check. We'll just check, do license check. So Fair Trading will have Service New South Wales, or Fair Trading will have a license check service, either of those, and that's where you can pretty much do a check online and see what, if the electrician has if they're up to date with their license. Okay, they may have, well, nothing's there for electrician, but, and also I spelt it wrong, EC electrician, and that may not come up with a hit either. We've probably got to put a name in or something like that. So here we go, for example, and we can check the status. We can go through and check people's details, contractor licenses, check and see whether here's an electrician here. You can check and see a fair bit of information about people. And this is real useful because as a consumer or as a builder, you're going to sometimes you're going to be desperate looking for tradespeople, and they're going to say they're real good. You found them on Facebook or somewhere, and you can go and do a check and make sure that they're all valid and bona fide. Okay, it's no good going and getting somebody to come and do work for you and their license doesn't check out. So you need to make sure that you've done a license check on the electrician. Somebody typed in the chat pod earlier there, you need to also make sure that they've done their safe work method statements, their risk assessments and all those sorts of things. So on big jobs, that will automatically be looked after. You need to make sure for the area where you're building, do you know how long it takes to get temporary power to your area? Okay, you need to make sure you know the process to be able to get power on site, permanent power on site, and how that's going to be done. How do you get permanent mains connected? Do you do what a lot of people do, and they'll set up a temporary power in the position of the permanent power with temporary pegs so that the brickie and the framer can come and lock the temporary power into being permanent power as you go. You can't do that on all jobs, but sometimes you can do that type of thing. So that's an example of some of the things that you need to be aware of there. You also need to be aware that Safe Work New South Wales has a lot of information on electricians and things as well. And Safe Work is concerned with people in their workplace, and with electricians and electricity, they also have a lot of information there for people. So if we go to, for example, looking at, I'll close some of these ones down. If we go to looking at electrical and power, they have a lot of information on that, and they'll actually specify a lot of the details there about how we go about electrical inspection and testing. What are the requirements for us regarding electrical work, and can we get the electrician to do some of that work for us, or can we get the license or the ticket to be able to do some of that work ourselves, right, regarding tools. So we go back to some Australian standards, and we can see here that there's an Australian standard that deals with our electrical workers, 3760, which is in-service safety inspections and testing of electrical equipment. And then we've got 33012, which is electrical installations, construction and demolition sites, outlines regular inspection and testing requirements. So these are a couple of Australian standards that are referred to on Safe Work New South Wales's website, which you would want to be aware of. We don't need to know how the technical details of electrical work, but we just need to be aware that we need people to make sure they're aware of it, so they work according to it. And then we've got, once again, there we come down to regular testing. So this particular part of Australian standards there, just specifically talking about testing. from time to time, they will issue, SafeWork New South Wales will issue safety alerts. And if we're subscribed to their newsletters and their automatic feeds, we will become aware of these. And sometimes this is something that we need to be aware of as the builder, because now as the builder, you're the one who is supervising all the different trades. You're supervising plumbers and electricians, not their actual work. Because you're not an electrician yourself, but you need to be a little bit over on top of understanding what they have to do and how to contract with them and make sure they're doing good work. An example of that is years ago I was supervising a job, and I came onto the job after the brickies had been there, and it was a block of units that had to have double brick wall as a party wall between the two units in some retirement units, and the brickies weren't supervised correctly, and it was double brickwork up to the ceiling level, and then from the ceiling level up they cobbled the brickwork across to be single brickwork from up in the ceiling space, and you wouldn't know when it was all finished, because unless you got up there, you look on one side of the brickwork and you think, oh yeah, there's a brick wall, and on the other side it looks like, in the ceiling space, it looks like there's a brick wall. But an astute council, local government authority building surveyor came and had a look and figured out that it was only single skin brickwork, and my job was to, when I first got there, was to rectify that and we got some heat proof paint so that we painted one side of the brick wall, because you couldn't at that stage go and put another skin of brickwork up, and that was able to rectify, but it cost a lot of money to do that, and that's just comes from supervision. Now, I'm not a bricklayer, but if you look at the plans, you can often check to make sure they're doing things correctly. And with electrical, you just need to be a little bit aware of that. One of the things that you are aware of as tradespeople is how much can an electrician notch out the studs and the noggings and things. And so we have to be a little bit aware of those sorts of things as well. Now, we need to be on top of the National Construction Code in regards to what it says about electrical, and you all should know how to find the National Construction Code now, because you're going to need it for your exam next week, and you should all have a subscription to that. So the first thing you're going to need to do is be able to access it and log in, and at some point you should have made yourself a login so that you can access this type of thing. So once you're able to access the National Construction Code, and I've just showed you there how to access that, so don't somebody say, I'm Googling it and I can't find it. I've actually got it saved on here somewhere anyway, so I'll just go to volume 2 of the National Construction Code. And if you do a search through there for electrical, and it also, I've also put some information in on here for you back on the site tonight. If we look at clause 3733, you'll find it talks in there. I think that was in volume 13733. We'll go to clause. So here we are, services in separating walls. We might have to be aware of what the construction code has to say regarding services in separating walls. So this would be fire separating walls. And we might have to keep an eye on the electrician to make sure that they're doing this correctly. And we've got the National Construction Code here, and says any service opening other than those listed in, you can look those up, in a separating wall must have a construction fire resistance level of -6060. So we don't need the structural integrity part of it, but we need to keep the flame out and keep the temperature and things out, and that's what those two are. So that service that runs through from one side of a wall to another has to be able to withstand fire for 60 minutes and be able to stop the spread of fire for 60 minutes. And there's details and things there which we would need to be aware of. So we just keep an eye on that and make sure that before we pay the electrician that we've checked that type of thing and made sure that it's all good. Okay. And then when we come down to 3865, so 3.8.6.5, so I've just demonstrated to you there how you can quickly answer a question in the quiz next week by going quite quickly to some of the clauses and be able to find the answers there, because some of them have got hints in them and it'll say 3865 or something like that. This once again says Services must not be chased into concrete or masonry separating walls. If it ducts oil, waste, etc., a door panel. So there's lots of information there which you need to be over as a builder to be able to support and make sure that you don't pay them till they've done their work correctly. Once they leave and you've paid them, they're probably really hard to get them back to do some extra work. And some of this is what you call a hold point, which will stop you from getting a pass through the council. If they come and see that things aren't passed correctly for any of these reasons, then we may have to pay someone else if we can't get the electrician back to fix things up. So we've got to offset them for in this particular case. Now you don't need to know all the details, but you want to have quick access to this to be able to check with the electrician and just check some of those things. And I just went through the National Construction Code to find this information. Just typed in electrical. And it's not mentioned all that often. And in fact, electrical will miss out on the word electrician or electricity. So if you just do a search through here, you can just check and see what's going to be relevant to me as a builder. And I'm looking through here just quickly. I can see things that this is to do with testing by the looks of it, which we're not going to test things so much. So this is to do with electricity generated from coal. So you just do a quick search through some of these things, and then that'll tell me after about 5 or 10 minutes, I'll have an idea of whether there's something there that I need to be aware of to be able to pass on to the electrician and check. In this particular case, you can see here allowable encroachments, and this is 3727. So I would want to go right back to 3.7 to see what this is talking about. But it says here that encroachments allowed within 900 mil of an allotment boundary or within 1.8 metres of another boundary on the same allotment are electricity and things like that. And it's going to tell us information there which we may or may not need to take into account before we pay the electrician. Okay, there's some variations there. We looked at services in penetrations in separating walls. Separating wall is to do with fire resistant levels for buildings that might be right next to each other. So as you can see, I'm just searching through here for the word electrical or the beginnings of the word electrical, so I can pick up on electrical, electrician, electric, and some of those things and see what they have to say that as a builder I might need to be on top of. Okay, and I just need to make sure that I've covered those off. So you can see there's quite a few things there, and then that's it. That gets us through to covering that particular one. Then I'd go through volume 1 as well if I was doing a class building other than a 1 to 10. So I talked about that. I talked about that one there. Now I want to just touch on the fair trading wiring rules. And so when we come back to fair trading, there we go there. And if we type in here wiring, because that's how the electricians define it, we come up with a bunch of hits here. And we come up to the wiring rules, and this gives us some information from fair trading. Now let's just see who we're talking to here. First of all, that's fair trading. This is targeted at trades and businesses, and it's targeted at the electricians, not to the consumer, because the consumer is going to be in this one or some of these other ones. This is targeted to the tradie, and it says here there's mandatory wiring rules from 1st of January. Now I'm no electrician, and I know that it's quite complicated and I don't really know what they are, but I want to see if there's anything in there that I need to be aware of in relation to supervising the electrician so that I don't pay them till they've done things to the best of that potentially should pass council inspection. And then if we jump over here and have a look, we can see Australian Standard 3000 comes up here as a hit. I'll just open that up here and have a quick look at it. And they're going to take us to that's going to take us to Standards Australia, which has the wiring rules, and obviously in that particular case we're going to have to buy it, but we have it up the top here. So if we just go to your favourite method of being able to access the Australian standards, I think that's all I need there. It's saved automatically on the other computer. Yep, that should get us through. And then there's three main standards that we need to be aware of, and there's one of them is 3000. So you might write this on your piece of paper if you're taking notes ready for next week. don't think there's any questions on this, but there's the wiring rules document. So I'm not sure if this will open a few things at once, but let's just try that and see. And you can see here, this is pretty much the wiring rules that they will learn. It's a couple of 100-page booklet from memory that'll teach, that's the Australian standard, tells them all about their wiring and things. Now, we don't, as we said, we don't want to be able to fully follow this, but some of it we're going to have to check. So that might take a moment. There we go. That's 4,700 megabytes. So it's a pretty big document, this one. This one goes through, yep, 471 pages. So let's just, always with these standards, we want to know a couple of things. Doesn't matter which standard it is. We want to skip down till we get to the contents page, because this is going to help us with our exam next week, firstly, but then for later on. And we want to have a quick look through here and see the sorts of things that it's going to talk about. General arrangement control of protection. That's always going to be scopes and definitions. That's where the definitions are. Okay, at the beginning instead of the end. Selection of wiring systems. There's going to be appliances generally. Then we've got this one here is earthing, which is real interesting for us, because we want to talk about that in a second. Then we've got damp situations. So what happens there? Then we've got come down here to some reference documents. Now this is real important because every Australian standard has reference documents, and this refers us to other Australian standards or other relevant documents, technical documents that might help us as we're making sure that we build properly. Now, you don't have to, like I've been saying all along, you don't have to guess how to build things properly these days. There's plenty of technical documents that tells you how to build it. And I'm just coming down here till we get to the scope. That's going to be the forward. And then when we start here, we've got scope. And this is the real important bit, because this tells us that this standard sets out requirements for the design, construction, and verification of electrical installations, including the selection and installation of electrical equipment forming part of such electrical installations. So this is for the electrician to be able to do their work. Now, real important, we just have a quick look here at the, so they've got details there that some of you might understand, but I don't really. I can sort of see some of the measurements there, and I can appreciate that when they say you can't have a PowerPoint directly over top of a the hand basin or something like that, well, they've got it from somewhere. And if you've got an electrician that sounds like they're not quite sure of some of those things, or they can just whip it anywhere, then you might want to do a little bit of research and find out yourself before you go too far. So you can see in this part here, there's page upon page of different references. And here we have this whole Appendix A. Appendix always means that's extra information at the end of the standards. And this one tells us all this extra information. It refers you to lots of different things. Look, there's concrete structures that's come up, 3,600. So there's lots of information that comes in there. And then I want to go back and have a quick look at another Australian standard, which is 3012, which deals with electrical installations as well. This one here is conditions, construction and demolition sites. So just have a quick look at this one. It's a little bit, got a bit of extra information. And then I'll come down to one that is particularly relevant for us. So this one's a much smaller document, but it's got, we've got the same sort of things here. So we come down here to the title contents page and have a look. This one goes through installation, scope, installation. You can see some of the things there: lighting and luminaries, lift shafts, transportable structures. Goes through verification. It's got some appendixes. Okay, and then we're going to go down here to the scope, which is just there. It says this sets out the minimum requirements for design, construction and testing of electrical installations that supply electricity to appliances and equipment on construction and demolition sites, and for the in-service testing of portable, transportable and fixed electrical equipment. So that's a relevant one there as well. And the last one that I want to do a quick look at is to do with generators, because in some cases you're not going to have temporary power or permanent power, and we just need to understand that here we have generating sets here, and there's an Australian standard for this as well. And this deals with some of the issues like earthing and protection and things like that. So we don't, as I said, we don't need to know the technical detail here, but just make sure you've got an electrician who's all over this type of information so that they can provide for you a compliant service that will pass muster when it comes to getting things inspected. That may or may not load very quickly there, but there's the electrical installations generating sets, Australian standard. I did have a look at that earlier. Downloaded it, but that may take a while now. So this is an example that you're probably going to want to download some of these and have them ready for next Thursday night, because if everybody jumps on and tries to do it at once, it is going to clog up and possibly take a while to come through. So this is also shared with New Zealand. Once again, look at the contents page at the beginning here. If you've got a question that you're trying to refer to, just try and see what this talks about here, and you can see there's a heap here with earthing arrangements, earthing and bonding requirements. Now, okay, so permanently connected generators, which some places have, there's some requirements there. Portable generators, so that's what a lot of you are familiar with, earthing and bonding. I need to have a look at that myself before I go camping next time. See, earthing requirements for generator sets connected to fixed electrical. You need to make sure that you're aware of that type of thing. Here's the scope. This sets out the minimum safety requirements related to the use of generating sets for the supply of electricity at low voltage, that is exceeding 1,000 volts or 1.5 volts. The standard applies to generating sets that are driven by internal combustion engines and forms any of the following: normal supply source, alternative supply source. Okay, and you can see some of the examples there. This is what we call the limitations. So if you get a question that says, what are the limitations of an Australian standard? Well, here's some limitations right here. This standard does not apply to that. Okay, that's an example of some limitations. So I've been through a bit there about some of the different wiring rules, the license check, that type of thing. I did want to bring out that pretty much the Work Health Safety Act and it's on the other computer there, but I'll quickly call that up for you. So it's Work Health Safety Act, New South Wales, 2017. And in, if we go to, that's going to go to legislation. There's our legislation there. And there's a part here, I think it was 163, clause 163 deals with electrical, and it gives authority to the Australian standards. There we're down to, I think it was from memory there, it was 163. So this is an example here of what the Work Health Safety Act has to say about electrical equipment installations and construction work. Duty of person conducting the business or undertaking, that's you all as builders. A person conducting a business or undertaking that includes the carrying out of construction work must comply with 3012. Now, I wouldn't know how to comply with that necessarily, but I would want to make sure that I've got written proof that my electrician is going to comply with that document there, because this is the Act, which is the highest legislation in New South Wales, which authorises Australian Standard 3012, and I may have turned that one off now, maybe. Yep, but that's where we would go, even though I don't think I could understand a lot of the formulas and calculations and things in that standard. I would want some written proof that my electrician is aware of, on top of, and willing to do his work as per that there. There's an example of the fines. It says, for the purpose of subclause 1, which is this one here, AS 3012 applies as if any term that is defined in that standard that is also defined in the Act, and this regulation has the same meaning as this Act or regulation. If any requirement in 3012 deals with the same matter, so that's a bit of legal speak there, but basically that everybody can understand that. Now, when we look at 3012, I bet you there's a lot of stuff there that that's 3010. I think I had 3012 there, but that's might have gone missing. This is 3010. And I've got 3012 here. And I bet you there's things in here that I'm not sure how good you all are with maths, but electrical work's pretty complicated. There it is there. here we go. And there's going to be formulas and things in here. We'll just go and look for something that's real complicated. So there's stuff in here that I'm not sure that I would understand. I wouldn't want to do it. These electricians go to do their trade for 3 years like you all do, and so they understand all this sort of stuff. Some of you might be pretty good at all that, but in lieu of me having to understand all of this and know what all that means and what all these different things mean, I would want a piece of document or a piece of paper that says my electrician has built according to these types of things. Okay, that looks pretty complicated, some of that from an electrical point of view. And this is something that you don't want to get wrong. That's why electrical is such a regulated trade, because if you get something wrong, it can be instant. You can have instant death. If you get something wrong in plumbing, it can be pretty quick, but it's also can be pretty long term. So are there any questions about any of that at all? Did any of you type into the chat? So that's good what Glenn said there. Find a good, reliable, licensed electrician. Look after him and he will make your life easier. Jacob's asked there, we need this Australian standard for the exam. I don't think so from record. Is there any electrical in the exam? I don't think so, but it'll be, if there is, I'm just trying to remember because I did the exam. There's 40 short answer sort of questions, but if you do need it, it'll ask you some of the things that I've just shown you, where you just have to quickly be able to search through for something, and it would normally give you a hint or something like that. I don't recall there being anything in there, but we're going to give you a little activity in a second, which will be basically a sample of what might be if there was something in the exam. So in lieu of answering any other questions there, what Brett's put up here for you, which is useful for you if you're in the Endeavour Energy area, is a brochure like the one I showed you earlier, which shows you how to get your electricity connected, okay, or augmented when not subdividing. So there's information here which will teach you about electrical. It's real important that you understand that every meter in Australia has an NMI number. So that's a key thing. Every single meter has an NMI number, and there's a national register of those numbers, which we can't access, but the electricians and people can. And so that's how they regulate the amount of power that goes in or out of a premises. Okay, and you need to, you're probably going to come across that sooner or later, and that's an example of how important what that NMI stands for. Now, what I'm going to do is open up this activity for you, which is possibly the last activity before you do your exams, and then we're going to set you loose, and you can go ahead and finish that activity. And then the last thing after that is, see, some of you have had a go of it, is have you completed enough class activities to be ready for the exams? So if you think you've done enough, and you can see that after you've done this one, you can give us a screenshot of having done your 90% up the top there, then send that through to us, especially after the weekend, and we'll be able to quickly check that and make sure that you're good and ready for the exams, because you pretty much, if you don't have 90% here, you haven't been through some of this work, then you are really going to struggle to get the exam done on time. I think Brett was saying last year, some people completed it within 3 hours. Some people took a bit longer than that. So some people took less than that. So you pretty much want to do it as quick as you can and as confidently as you can. And it's all going to revolve around you being able to search through the documents and the technical information. There's 3 questions there for you, and you should be able to work your way through those quite easily. And that's your activity for tonight. So I'll leave you to do that. I'll just be here in case you need help. Some won't be green because we haven't actually marked them, but we'll go through and have a look at those for sure. We might do some of them now actually. And unless anybody's got any other questions,